you could write a script that would then instance those objects pretty much instantaneously, or those modifiers instantaneously. And it might take you 2 or 3 minutes to actually write that script, but that would actually be time well spent, because if you had a similar task to do again, which can often be the case in a project, you'd have that script available. You could modify it ever so slightly to change names, and you'd have the same tool to use again. And in that way you can build up a little tool set and very easily accelerate your workflow. So when you're working with mass instancing of objects or modifiers, as I said, a very cool way of doing it can be via MaxScript. And Borislav Petrov, otherwise known as Bobo, who many may know of the 3ds Max community web boards, he's actually done a DVD for us called MaxScript for the Masses, and that actually covers that kind of workflow where he instances modifiers, he breaks instancing, recreates instancing after breaking it, instances objects, instances controllers, and so on, back and forth. And that's actually a very good introduction to the topic of instancing via MaxScript. So that's actually worth a watch if you haven't actually watched that title already. Let's look at our last instancing task, and that's to actually instance controllers across. So I'll get these modifiers, and I'll just get rid of them here. And what I'm going to do is I've actually got a modifier on here called taper, and that's got an amount value. Let's have a look at what that actually does. As you can see, it doesn't actually need much of an amount to have a drastic effect. So let's have a look at something else. Let's put a new modifier on here called twist. There we go. And that actually requires sort of larger values, as you can see. And we'll go over here to this teapot, and we'll put on a modifier which has a similar kind of something that needs quite large values basically to have an effect. And I think the bend modifier is like that. Yeah, that's pretty good. They have the same kind of range of values needed to get a sort of noticeable effect. And as I showed you earlier, we'll just instance across those controllers. And there are 2 ways of doing it. One is via wiring. Well, actually, there are lots of different ways of doing it. You can wire it. You can copy across the controllers. You can also use expression controllers to link those 2 parameters together. But in this case, we're looking at pure instancing, controllers which are instance, and there's actually only one way to do that. And that's actually via MaxScript. Well, 2 ways. And those are via MaxScript or via the user interface. So we're going to do it with the user interface here. So it doesn't really matter which of the 2 values we go to and instance over to the other side, because as I said, with instancing there's no real master. Both values are equally as important, and either of them can be the basis for the instancing. So I'll go down to the twist. We'll just select this object, open up the curve editor, and you can see we've got this tree here of controllers. These are all the transforms up here. You can see the main transform node, position, then you've got X, Y, Z position, rotation, and you've got a single controller controlling the scale values. Then we've got another couple of branches on the tree, as it were. We've got the modified object, and that's where all the stack modifiers are held, and then we've got the material branch. And if you open up the material branch, you can see here it's got the parameters for the material which is currently applied to it. So you got, for the maps, shader basic parameters, extended parameters, super sampling parameters, and so on and so forth. In this case, we want to look at the modified, the stack parameters. So we're going to go into modified object. You can see we've got turbo smooth at the top, editable poly, twist, taper, and teapot. We're at the base object there. So we're going to go into twist. Just open that up, and you can see that the twist, because it's actually got a gizmo, it also has a transform. So you got another transform tree here, but in this case we're not interested in the transform. We're just interested in the twist angle value. Now currently this nub is actually grayed out. That's because it actually hasn't got any sort of animation applied to it. And when parameters in Max don't have animation applied, they don't have controllers applied, and that's just a way of saving on memory and resources, which is obviously a cool thing to do in any sort of big scene. So we can apply a controller by clicking on a right mouse button. You can see we've got a menu here to assign controller, I'm just going to assign a Bezier float controller, which is just a normal floating point value. It'll automatically pick up the value which is there and assign it to the float controller as is created, so you don't get any sort of jump in value there. So I'll just do that. And you can see now that it's actually assigned a little icon there, and that actually shows that there's a controller in place. And in this case, that icon represents a Bezier float, and you can see that these are Bezier floats as well. So I'm going to right click on that, go down to here and copy. That's actually copied that controller into my copy buffer. I can now control the close the curve editor, go over to our second teapot. I'll open up the curve editor again, go into the modified object. We've only got one modifier applied, and that's bend. Open that up. Again, the bend has got a gizmo, so again it's got a full transform tree here, which will allow you to actually change the controllers on the gizmo. And we're going to go down to the angle value, right click to bring up the quad box menu, and I'm going to paste. And you can see we've got two options here. We've got copy or instance. We're going to go for an instance, obviously. I'll OK that. And now those two modifiers are sharing that particular parameter. The angle parameter here and the angle parameter here are both using that same controller. So as I change that value, you can see both teapots are being modified, but in different ways, because as you can see, that controller is instanced between two different types of parameter, basically between the two different teapots. So that's it for instancing and referencing. And as you can see, it's a really, it's a pretty deep subject really, and it's something which we will actually return to in more detail in a future DVD in this series, where we look at this kind of topic in a slightly more advanced level. And on that DVD, we'll actually look at how you can wire parameters together. You can actually link parameters together using expression controllers, or you can link them together using script controllers. And we'll also come back to instancing controllers as we've seen here. So now that we're done with instancing and referencing, let's move on and have a look at the base geometry object types that we actually have in 3ds Max.